morning, Laura, and good morning, everyone joining us today. Before we begin the session, please feel free to use the chat facility here and share with us where are you joining in from. We'll be starting with the workshop soon. Well, just one little request. We're going to request everyone to please keep your mics on mute, and please feel free to use the chat facility as much as you want today. Share questions, share your thoughts, share your comments throughout the session. Welcome to the second and final day of the Leader Camp, brought to you by Skillsoft and People Matters. It is an immense pleasure for me to welcome you back all again. I'm Bhavna Sareen, Content Manager and Lead DNI at People Matters, and it is my privilege to be your host for the day. We had an amazing session yesterday by Rashim, Satish, and our panel speakers. They've shared some wonderful insights and real case examples from their experiences. I'm sure the learnings from yesterday have fueled new ideas and roadmaps for you and your teams. In our workshop today, we will look at building a super learning environment that offers a transformational leadership approach to fast-track the growth of your next generation leaders. To facilitate the workshop, we have with us Laura Overton, co-creator of Emerging Stronger. Laura is an author, facilitator, and award-winning learning analyst dedicated to uncovering and sharing progressive practices that add strategic business value. She led a 15-year global research program that explored impactful learning strategies. Her work through Learning Changemakers and Emerging Stronger continue to empower learning leaders to take bold action needed to support the changing world of workplace learning. Welcome to the Leader Camp, Laura. How are you doing today?
I am doing so well. I'm very excited to be able to work with everyone this morning.
I'm sure everyone else here is excited as well for you to join us today, Laura. We have an exciting agenda planned ahead of us. The next 2 hours will be full of hands-on experience with chat storms and polls. We will also divide the audience today in groups of 5 and encourage them to share their experiences, insights, and strategies. We request you to please keep a notebook, pen or pencil, whatever you have handy with you for the session. For any questions that you have for Laura today, and like I've said, any questions, any comments, any insights, please feel free to use the chat window and keep sharing those with us. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Laura. Over to you.
Bhavna, thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. I'm joining you here from quite an early start here in Wimbledon in London, but I'm just so thrilled that technology allows us to be able to connect together, to work together and to think together. And in this morning's session, what we really want to do is to start taking a look about how we can think about supporting and building creative transformational leadership opportunities, not only in our own organizations, but potentially within ourselves as well. So I'm very excited to be able to be working with you today. You can find me on LinkedIn at Laura Overton, and as Bhavna says, I've spent a lot of my career, at least 50% of the 30 years that I've spent in learning and development, exploring and researching with literally tens of thousands of learning leaders like yourselves around the globe, and equally tens of thousands of learners as well, to understand what works and what doesn't and what makes an impact. So if you're interested in reading any of the research, then it's all there on my LinkedIn profile. The other thing that I've done for you today is that I have created and curated a whole range of resources for you, which will be available to you towards the end of this session. I don't want us to get too distracted now, but the slide set's in there and all of the research reports that I'm going to be reporting on, all of the types of things that we're looking at, the case studies, all going to be available to you to be able to access immediately during the end of this session. So hang on in there and keep going with us. So without further ado, what I'd love to know is what you want to get out of the next hour. Now, I'd like you to kind of write it into chat, but not to hit send just yet. So I'd like to give you just a couple of moments to reflect on what your goals are for the next hour. What do you want to be able to do differently? What do you want to be able to ask? I know that everyone's looking for new ideas, but why? So I'd like you to just reflect for a moment privately, because this is your time and I want you to own it. And where possible, I'll come back to some of these ideas just to make sure that we're covering it. So again, just give you a couple of minutes to just reflect for a moment. Now, what is it that you want to get from this session? And if we can't cover it between us, because this is a collaborative workshop, then I think I will certainly try and come back to some of your ideas and some of the maybe unanswered questions or goals that you've got. So we want you to own it, basically, don't we, Pavna? We want people to actually really make this personal for themselves. And the best way to do that is to set yourself your own goal. So Pavna, when do you think we're ready to hit send?
I think another 10 seconds. Let's just give everyone a moment to, although I think everyone has started putting in their responses.
We're starting to get in. Okay, why don't we just do that then? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go for it. What are the sorts of things? I mean, it's great to see what are the sorts of skills, the design that people are looking for. There's some great stuff, Pavna, wasn't there, yesterday, covered on learning design in the panel, different people's perspectives. And if you weren't able to attend that panel, there's lots and lots of thoughts and ideas there as well. So really today we're here to look at what are the right kind of skills, the design. Lishka, I think the decision making there, that was the strategy building, as you're seeing popping through in that chat room as well. So, you know, helping us to be strategic thinkers. And I'm really believe in that. I think that we are people leaders, and therefore this is as vital a topic for us as people leaders as it is for those that we're expecting. No matter scaling 10 times in every aspect, yes, absolutely. It's 10 times impact, 10 times reach, 10 times resources, 10 times ROI, and whilst at the same time, you know, keeping real, keeping human. I absolutely love that. I was listening to a podcast yesterday where it was talking about the fact we neglect to remember that we're actually, in terms of behavioral economics, we're dealing with humans who don't always do everything that we want. They don't remember everything that we teach them. So I love the fact you're reminding us of that this morning. Charles, thank you as well. Better understanding of leading learning design. And, you know, Charles, we are going to be looking at that, but from a slightly different perspective. But in the resources that I've got for you, I've got some of my favorite books that I go to regularly about learning design and the science of learning and debunking some of the myths. So, Charles, we absolutely want to be able to look at that with you today. So thank you so much for all of your thoughts in this chat room. We are going to come back to this time and time again this morning, but you know, write your goals down for yourself on a piece of paper. We're going to encourage you to get a piece of paper and to work and to own some of these things, whether you mind map but just write your goal down on the top of a piece of paper. And when you spot something in the chat room or from the front of the room, then please, you know, make your own notes, make your own reflections to come back to, so that you can piece some of this together for you in your context and your situation. So thank you for joining in with us. What we're going to be doing this morning over the next couple of hours is going on a journey together. So for those of you who are looking at the right people, the right skills, we're going to be looking at the opportunity first of all, and then we're going to touch briefly on how we need to hit that 10 times goal that you mentioned earlier. How do we scale up? And you know what? This is what we're doing right now. This is what we're doing. We're looking at technology. We're looking at scaling up. We're looking at connecting, but we're also looking at some of the challenges of using that, which is why we want to go back to some of the basics, and we'll be looking at some basics of learning design, particularly in the light of transformative leadership. And we'll start to do some real work together as a group in our breakout rooms and share our own thinking, our collective wisdom. We will have a little bit of a break, just a 5-minute stretch during this list so that you can walk away and know you're not going to be missing anything. But we will then have a kind of a hidden benefit of really thinking differently, which I'm really excited to share with you. So I'm not going to talk about that now. That's going to be after we come back from the break. And then we will be looking at, okay, well, where do we start? And we start with us. And what does this mean for us and for the goals that we've just set? And of course, I'll have those resources for you, everything we've talked about and more available for you at the end of the session. So this is just to give you a little sense of the journey that we're on. So let's get started. Transformational leadership, part 1, the opportunity. What is the opportunity for transformational leadership? And I think when we're looking at things like right skills, right design, right time, we have to really remember everything that we know intuitively and everything that our participants shared with us yesterday on the first day of the LEADERCAMP. The fact that leadership in today's modern economy is complex. It's a complex skill. There isn't a right answer and there isn't a wrong answer. Now, I did my first degree in a combined degree of mathematics and psychology. I chose mathematics because I loved the fact that there was always a right answer at the end of my schooling years, however complicated the calculation. And it was a shock to me when I studied pure mathematics. There were multiple mathematic answers. And actually, it was a good shock because it kind of established me for the whole field that we work in. There are no right ways and wrong ways to be able to say, how do we help people put down roots in their own organization? How do we help establish goals? How do we help growth in our organization? How do we help sustainability in our organization? How do we deal with the fact that people are we're no longer all connected and that we are more collaborative? How do we deal with the digital world? What does it mean for our customers, for our staff, for our employees, for our partners? What does it mean for our stakeholders? What does stakeholder value mean? When we're talking about leadership in today's modern world, we're talking about a situation of complexity where there are no right and wrong answers. I guess this is just one way of me saying there's going to be no right and wrong answers today. What we have to do is to work out how the pieces come together in our own situations. And that's really what transformational leadership is all about. So if we were to be successful at everything we do today and all of our initiatives around supporting and building transformational leadership, what do you think success should look like? I would love to see some comments in the chat room about, if we look back and we have a chat with each other again in a year, maybe 2 years' time, and said, the work we did in this field, we know it worked because this is what we can now see, we can now feel, we can now experience. Kashif, thank you so much for kind of kicking us off there with the concept of agility. That, I guess that means, because you also agility of our organization, of individuals, personal success, Kieran, there, objectives, I guess clear objectives, smart objectives, unique objectives to our organizations there, Satya. I think that's a really important perspective there. I love this kind of pay it forward, Anurag, the leaders developing more and more leaders around them. So sort of success breeding success in the organization, whatever that success looks like. Yes, exactly, Kiran, about the success keeping changing as the organization and the situation changes as well. Zahira, I love the fact that you're talking about growth mindset in action. The fact that we continue, getting to the point earlier about agility there. I'd like to ask you a question as well, is what would people's behavior be like? What will they be doing? And I think it's really important, if we're looking at skills, we need to look at behavior. because behavior is so critical in our organizations as well. Jay, leadership for laddership. We're loving this. That is why I love working with the chat room. Our collective wisdom can kind of inspire and motivate each other. So Jay, I love that as well. It's about how people individually, how I read that, how they individually are able to move on in the organization and to change and adapt. And that's going to be so critical in this new digital world, don't you think, where we don't know the jobs that are coming in the future. So as leaders, we're not only having to deliver today, but plan for tomorrow. We're not only having to use the resources that we have available today, but how they are going to change tomorrow. And where is the overlap and the interlink, and how do jobs change within that situation? And, you know, listening to your points about unspoken words, listening, emphasizing, you know, understanding what's going on in the minds of the people as this world of work is unfolding is going to be critical to encourage that progress. Pavna, are you seeing anything in here that's kind of really grabbing your attention, particularly after the session yesterday?
Absolutely right. I think there are a couple of things here, in fact, but what caught my attention mostly here was that ability to understand unspoken words. And, you know, one of our speakers yesterday, I think Satish, had, you know, emphasized how, especially in the past 20 months, there's been so much focus on leadership to be authentic, to be transformational, to be compassionate. So, you know, that entire lens, when we talk about empathy right now, that leaders need to demonstrate, I mean, that ability to understand unspoken words, I think it is something that needs to be fostered. And while for many, like, you know, it could come naturally, but I do think that's something that can be built if nurtured and given the necessary time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And our ability to talk. But what does that bring us? What are people able to do differently as a result of listening? And I think that's one of the things that I'd like to kind of encourage us to be able to be thinking about today, is about how do we want people to behave once they have understood our transformative leadership perspectives. You know, what behavior, what do we want them to be able to do? Because I think a lot of the time when we look at leadership, it's often about how do we want people's minds to be able to respond, and our agility, the way we think, our character, and all of these are absolutely critical. But we can't necessarily influence those through our work as learning leaders. What we can do, though, is potentially apply great science, great design, great thinking to help people change and be equipped and ready to do their job, to be able to behave differently to do their job. And for me, I always used to say that learning and development, you know, my research was about how do we make an impact. And I think in the early years of my research, it was all about performance. What can we do better? How can we do better today? But I think in the last 3 years, my mind has shifted, because actually impact is also about how we create opportunities for our organization to be equipped and ready. And when I say organization, I mean the individuals to be equipped and ready for the job they do today and also tomorrow. The teams that they're in are equipped and ready to do their job today and respond tomorrow. And the organizations that we represent as a result of our work are equipped and ready, not only to be successful today, but to be ready and to be successful tomorrow. So when I'm thinking about design, when I'm thinking about the right people and the right contact, that's what is going on in my mind as a kind of a mantra of, you know, what is my role here? Is it to develop programs and courses? And personally, everything I've seen in the research and everything I've seen in high-performing learning organizations, so that our role is to make people equipped and ready. And sometimes we need to do that in a way that's different. We need to bring our expertise to the party and work in complex worlds with other people. So great to get your feedback. We'll close off this particular conversation, but keep the conversation going. I have no problem whatsoever you connecting with each other, answering each other's questions. That's what this is all about. And soon we'll be meeting each other face to face as well. So I'd like to have a very brief moment with you about managers versus leaders. We're talking about leadership here, but at the beginning of last year, I was asked to do some research into management training. And actually, what I was looking at in that space in time was the fact that pre-COVID and post-COVID, the role of managers, you know, those poor people who are having to deliver customer service with a team of contact center representatives and now all working from home, you know, that what that management role has happened to that role is it literally had shifted. So managers, we always used to say, oh, you know, managers, they run processes and they get things done and they achieve the targets and they do basically and achieve the vision of the leaders, you know, often working in hierarchical organizations, a clear works but defined environment, looking at processes, their teams are all fixed, they're enforcing because things are fixed. How do you get things running smoothly and well? You know, they're managing the resources and often as a result of that having to control and you know, sort of like pick up the slack in a poorly performing team, and they prioritize deliverables and tasks. Whereas post-COVID, the role of the manager has actually changed. The organizations are flatter, the more remote, more hybrid. Therefore, our role is much more about providing direction and equipping people to be able to make those decisions without having that close structure around them. We're working with mixed teams. I've never seen as much focus on managers to support the well-being, the conversations, flexibility, and helping people to reinvent. How much reinvention is going on in the last year, not just organizationally, but individually and in teams, and prioritizing people. And when I even just think about the role of the manager, a good manager now has to be a transformational. Oops, can you hear me? I'm getting a message saying that I'm muted. So, Pavna, if you can just you can hear me.
Yeah,
great.
no, you know, yes.
Perfect. So a good manager has to also be a transformational leader. If we think about transformational leadership, and Satish talked about this model yesterday, from the 4 levels of leadership, we're going from kind of a laissez-faire leadership, transactional to transformational, where our role is much more to influence, to motivate, to kind of individualize that active listening consideration, and to create situations which actually bring out the creativity of other people. That's the definition that Satish used yesterday of transformational leadership. And for me personally, I believe that this is as valid in managers. So if we're talking about who needs this, you know what? I think we all need this when it comes to transformational leadership talent. You know, there'll be existing talent, those who are in existing jobs, who are accidentally hidden suddenly in team leadership roles or manager roles and didn't know how to get there. They got there through their technical expertise and not through their people expertise. We've got the hidden talent in our organizations, those in our organizations who are afraid to come forward, who would never put themselves forward for promotion, who have never considered themselves in that way, different backgrounds, different areas. And we've got our future talent as well. So when we're thinking about reach of our transformational leadership initiatives, actually, suddenly we're talking about a much wider range of audiences who need these sorts of skills. And the skills that people are really looking at, you can look at the work of McKinsey. I've curated this for you in the resources. You can look at the work of the skills that they need for a future citizen. McKinsey also did some great work on the skills that make the most impact in leaders. And they include the stuff we've already been talking about, being supportive, being focused, having purpose. So these types of skills, and again, this has been curated by looking at people like the World Economic Forum, the McKinsey, the Chartered Management Institute. There's so many different sources of saying, what are the skills that we need? Yes, there are some technical skills in here. Some functional skills are technical, but a lot of them are those people skills, and that's going to be so critical for us as well, which is why in the Emerging Stronger work that I'm currently doing on a global program, we're actually calling these transformational leadership skills as future fit skills. These are the skills that we need not only to lead today, but to be ready for change tomorrow and to lead in change tomorrow. They're also, to a certain extent, the skills that all of us need in order to be ready to contribute to change. So regardless of where we are in the organization, these are the skills that will get us ready for the jobs which are unknown in the future. So I'd like us to just kind of reflect on this for a moment, because, and if you want to take a picture, use your camera, take a picture of this screen right now, so that you've got that as a reminder as we go through. This is a broad range of skills that will change the behavior of the people that we're going to be connecting with. So let's kind of move on in this space. There's a little poll that I'd love to run with you right now to say, okay, because none of these skills on here are new, let's face it, but how are you addressing them at the moment? I'd love to have the poll come up. This is clearly, with a poll in a complex world, it's a little bit of everything. So I'd like you to look at the poll options right now and to say which is the one that it's secret, this poll. So in your gut sense, which is the statement that best represents your perspective? So Pavna, Kanika, can we bring up the poll for people? Is that available for people to see now? Talk us through how we can access that.
Yes, Tora. I'm going to request the team to bring it up, and here it is.
Perfect.
I hope everyone can view this. What is your strategy for building future fit skills?
That's right. Brilliant. Thanks for bringing that up. So if these skills, for the wider audience, aren't on our agenda yet, if we're kind of at the moment just dedicating it to the high performers and the elites, and that's one, it might be that you say, look, to be honest, these aren't the skills in our organization. And I know our organization, we're looking to recruit some of these critical skills in right now. Do you believe that you're proactively, with intent and design, supporting people, but it's only a few of those wide audiences that we were talking about? That's the third option. Have you kind of opened up the technology content libraries and say, look, we're offering them to everybody, but the take up is quite low? Or do you have proactive initiatives to not only offer content but build skills across the organization? So it would be great to get your perspective. If you could just answer your gut sense. It's a little bit of a fun to see the sense in the room at the moment of which one you feel probably honestly reflects where your organization is at. And if you're working with organizations, you choose your best client and where are they up. As I say, there's no judgment in this. We're just trying to get a sense of where we're at today. So tick 1 and hit submit. And I'm just going to give you a few more seconds, and I will take a quick drink, let you reflect, and then I will ask Kanika if we can have the answers up. So that'll be great to hear from you. Let's give it a go. What is the room saying? Let's see the answers of the poll.
Hi everyone, I hope you received the poll. Just please do select one option that's more suitable to your organization, and please hit submit so we can get a view of how is everyone here doing.
Brilliant.
And team, I'm going to request you to please bring up the poll results as soon as we have them.
Yeah, and it's great to see that Kieran in the chat room is flagging how they are being proactive in building those skills across the organization. So this is fantastic. Yeah, but it's 50% of us are being proactive in building the skills, and that's a fantastic opportunity. And yet these are the laddership skills that you were talking about earlier. These are the skills that are going to create opportunities for all organizations, and yet the majority of us, if we're not doing that, we're proactively focusing on the elite. And I think that's one of the challenges that we've got at the moment, is that the elite is the focus. We say, well, who are our future leaders? Who are our high potentials? But actually, we all need some of this opportunity coming in together. So great to actually see some of these poll results come through there. And hopefully, Kanika, we can connect with these and keep these for later. So let's move on. There is a little bit of a gap. We've got some great experience in the room, though. 50% of you are being proactive right now. Loving to hear your experience as we go through here today. Kieran, thank you saying about defining 4 levels of those skills. That's fantastic. So the challenge is that how do we take our thinking and roll it out? It's not just about rolling out content, but how do we build skills? Because we're not going to achieve the goals that we were talking about earlier in the session by just giving people lots of things to do and read. We're going to achieve those goals by being proactive in thinking about how we build skill and change behavior. And that obviously involves setting new habits in our organization. We're not going to be able to do it on our own. Often our resources are static, but our opportunity is 10 times, as we mentioned earlier. So for me, I will declare that I have always had an interest in the role of technology, not because I'm a technologist, but because of from my psychology background. How can it actually help us connect better to the way that adults learn? And this was something that I looked at in a lot of detail. I went out to people not to say, how do you prefer? What's your learning style? Don't get me on learning styles. There's not a lot of science behind that. But I just asked individuals in organizations, how do you learn what you need to do your job? And what was so interesting, particularly when I cut the data by those that people in leadership and management courses, it wasn't that different to the way that most of us learn. Actually 8 in 10, it was about having on-the-job support. That's how they learn how to do their job on a day-to-day basis, kind of learning in that flow of work. We talked about yesterday, and lots of great examples of that. 8 in 10 was saying, I'm also using web search. That was very important as well. 7 out of 10, and again, Satish talked about this so eloquently yesterday, about the power of conversation, the way we connect with each other, the way we relate with each other is so vital to our learning and our growth. A support from mentors and coaches, and yes, particularly for leaders, a support from structured programs. This isn't just something with these complex skills that we're talking about. It's not something we can just do through Googling and searching. This is about, we need to apply, to think, to build new habits of the way that we think. So for me, this was really critical, and it was incredible that actually the leaders in the when I was analyzing this data, there was something like 50,000 pieces of data from around the globe, from individuals in the workplace. But those with leadership roles, those with specific responsibilities for other people, they were even more likely to be going to chat rooms and to Google search and to these types of areas. So technology isn't a barrier to most of us to be able to just learn how we do our jobs. And yet it often can be a barrier to us. I think just before I look at the barriers that you seem to face with this, because we mustn't ignore that, I'd like to just look at the opportunity of how we can use technology to scale up, because it's not just about delivering more for less. That's typically how we've looked at it. How can you deliver more courses to more people for less money? And I'm all for more for less, but I think, how do we deliver more impact for less investment of time? It's all about impact. And so for me, technology offers 4 key areas. It offers accessibility, which is critical for those people who cannot get to the traditional places. They can't get there because there are hidden managers, there are women in the workforce, there are people who are nervous about showing up and being seen to be exploring. They offer that accessibility. Technology, like today, offers community to support and to sustain. It also offers the opportunity for us to be able to practice safely in simulated environments and in places which aren't as exposed for us. And it also offers the data which allows us to think about personalization and about performance. And that's about the bigger holistic picture. So I think it's really important in our own mindsets. We've got to think about how technology can help. And I want to set that in place now, because I just want us to revisit this context over and over again. But before we revisit that, I also know that technology creates a lot of barriers, and it would be great if we could have our second poll now to come up to say, you know, what are the obstacles do you face in using technology? Because I think it will be helpful for us to actually understand, you know, the challenges that we potentially face. So if we can bring up that poll now, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So again, gut reaction, what is the one that you think represents the majority of the challenges that you face using technology with significant learning interventions in your organization? I've seen all of these, by the way. I've seen all of these examples in play across the research that I have been doing over the years. The fact that actually we're hungry to change, but you know, the leaders around us have been through more traditional routes and have got traditional expectations of what they need from us, or they think they need from us as a learning and development function. For some, it's about lack of engagement, you know, that we set up all these great systems and people just don't have the time, the inclination, the awareness to be able to connect. For some, it's about us and the fact that actually this is a big agenda, and our teams just aren't confident in looking at the technology area. For some, it's the main area and obstacle is the cost of setup, development, maintenance, and some it's the technology itself. So go with your gut sense. What one do you think represents the obstacle that you're facing? And if you're not facing any obstacles at all, we absolutely want to hear from you in the chat room, because we're going to be calling on you later to find out some of your secrets. No, but seriously, if you're not seeing any obstacles at all, love to get your perspective on that. So just give you a couple more moments. We just would like to see that. If you can everyone see the poll, and would you like to connect through with that? How are we doing on the numbers, Padma?
We're just waiting for a couple more responses, Laura, before we can have the final results. So if anyone here is yet to submit their results, please do go through the options and choose a suitable option and submit your results, please. And I'm going to request the team to bring up the results as soon as we have them.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bhavna. I have to admit, I voted as well, but I voted based on last year's research, which was something like 700 people. And so I voted L&D are overwhelmed and under-equipped, because that was something that really came up in all of the research last year. But you know what, lack of engagement. I've been working in this field for 30 years, and it has always been the #1 priority. And to be honest, it's one of the things that kickstarted my own research, is that why is it that some people can address these challenges and deliver impact and get that engagement and others can't? And so the kind of research and a lot of the things I'll be sharing today are all based in that research process. So that lack of engagement, you know, we want to, but others don't. And I think that also ties up with the traditional expectations, and a third of us are struggling with that. And I'd like to come back to that point at the end of today as well. Much less to do now as unreliable technology. You know, that's great to see that it was very high 10 years ago, but now it's dropped right down. It was the top barrier when we were asking 10 years ago. But that cost of setup and maintenance, that still is there. You know, it takes work, but I think it's not just a technical setup, but it's what we do with these tools. What we do with them, our skills and the way we're equipped, I think is so important. So again, thank you so much for that. And let's look at, you know, some of these challenges that we've got today. So what I'd love to do now is for us to go back to basics. Let's go back to some of the principles. Now, what I don't want to give you models. There are plenty of models for learning design, plenty of great insights for how to design well with technology. And I've shared some of those, the ones that I use a lot in the resources that I've collated for you. But because this is a complex situation, all of us have got different environments, all of us have got different outlooks, all of us have got different audiences, all of us have got different skills to look at. What I want to do is to go back to first principles. And what I want to do, and I hope you don't mind me being a little bit indulgent, is that I'd like to tell you a story about my best ever learning experience, which basically had no technology in it at all. It was in the late 90s. I was relatively new in my career. And I've been asked to reflect on this a lot recently, because a lot of people have said to me, well, what was your best learning experience? And I know a lot of people often say, well, I learned this off YouTube. But for me, it was actually a formal learning initiative. Let me tell you why. I was in a role where I wanted promotion, but as a woman in that role, it was a technology company. It was an education technology company. Traditionally, all of the customer-facing roles, those that are out working directly with organizations, were taken up by older men who'd all worked at IBM, all wore the suits. I was pulling my hair out. I was hungry. I'd achieved well in my role that I was doing behind the scenes, but I wanted to get out there. I wanted to get the promotion. I wanted to be actively involved with the customers and supporting our customers. But I was blocked at every route. And a friend said to me, come on this program. And it was actually the Dale Carnegie course on how to win friends and influence people. Now, that sounds a little bit corny. For goodness sakes, it sounds old. He wrote his stuff in 1936. But the experience that I had on that learning program was really significant for me. It was a 13-week program. We spent one evening a week with maybe 30 people. At the beginning of that evening, they talked about some of the principles in Dale Carnegie's Golden Book, things like, and life gives you lemons, make lemonade, when different principles that we had for listening to people, letting other people save face, don't make decisions until you've got all of the facts. Actually, these were really simple principles that actually really address deep things that we talk about now: cognitive bias, leadership, listening skills, communication skills, but they were kind of diluted into a simple principle. And we had a small amount of the time every week helping us to understand the principles. Then we were asked the next week to go out and apply one or of them in our own workplace. And each week we came back, and 30 of us every week did a 2-minute presentation on how we had applied that principle and what we'd learned. During that presentation, during that scheduling, where we're connecting and engage with each other, what we were looking to do is we got positive feedback from the group, and also positive feedback. They never said you did that badly, you're speaking badly, you're slouching, you could improve this. They always looked for the very, very best in us as we moved forward. And at the end of each of these sessions, people voted on who they wanted to give the book of the week to. Simple stuff, really simple stuff. But it equipped me over that period of time to have the confidence. And not only did I was able to ask my promotion, but I was also able, because I paid for this course myself, able to get my company to pay for the actual course itself. So there were some principles there that, when I've been looking back now and understanding more about learning research and learning design, that they had absolutely nailed. And those principles have stayed with me and applied them. I've applied them in my research. I've applied them in my management. I've used them to adapt and flex and change and be resilient. So these are habits and principles that were established in me that not only got me that promotion, but have been with me for the rest of my life. So in the chat room, I would love you to kind of maybe reflect a little bit. It's not all going to be about me, I promise you, but reflect on my story. as a number of different things I've shared with you just then of my experience of that program. There wasn't any technology, it was books, it was paper. It was standing up in front of a group of 30 people and sharing stories and listening to other people's stories. But which aspects of my learning experience do you think led to my promotion then? And to be honest, helped me create that foundation of which I've realized of transformational leadership skills. So I'm just wondering what you saw in that story. Pavna, I'm gonna, whilst people are connecting with that, based on what you heard yesterday, was there anything in my story that resonated with some of the things that some of the panel people were saying yesterday?
Absolutely, Laura. I think the entire piece right now that while technology is there for our advantage today, to work to our advantage today, I think the element of storytelling and sharing and listening. One of the key points that came out yesterday is how for transformational leadership, a lot depends just on pure conversations. And even in the numbers, I think you showed a while ago, a lot of learning, I think for 7 in 10 leaders, the learning happened through conversations.
Yeah.
So I think that is one thing that really stands out in learning. It's not just about a one-way conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even a conversation. It has to be two-way. There has to be listening. There has to be sharing.
Yeah.
And then you go out and apply that. So I think that sure resonates with me. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It was the stories, and people's stories inspired you. Yeah. They really, really did. And AJ kind of has mirrored your content. Parag also says about the focus on yourself. And, a lot of behavior change, when you look at behavioral economics and the different models in behavioral economics, people change their behavior when it comes down to motivation. And Parag, you said I was focusing on myself. I joined this because I was desperate. I was so frustrated at work and I so wanted to move on. I was motivated. I was tapped into my motivation to the extent that I even paid for this myself. And I think this is important for us as well, is that there are people in our organizations who are hungry, who haven't had the opportunity before, and technology allows us to scale up, allow people to tap into that motivation there as well. Deepak, you're talking about the coaching and development. And what was really interesting, Deepak, it wasn't just from the instructor, but it was the feedback that you got from your peers who were listening to you in the room, which was, I think, as valuable for me in terms of people saying, oh, you could do this. Have you thought of this? Asking me questions, getting me to own it, basically. So Deepak, thanks for spotting that one as well. Purity, networking and collaboration, absolutely. So vital in that. And that collaborative approach has been brought up as well. That working as a team in the room as well. I'm just looking down for one thing that I felt was really relevant to me, and if I've missed it, please forgive me. Kieran, you talk about purpose making a difference in life as well. That was so vital for me. Here's the thing that I think really made the difference. This was a 13-week program. I was only in with these peers 3 hours a week, but the rest of the week I was directly. I'm not quite sure. I think somebody might come off mute there. For the rest of the week, in the back of my mind, I had these little simple one-line principles, and I was thinking, I knew next week I had to report back on how I'd done with them. So I was constantly looking for ways and examples of using at least one of those principles in my workflow. So just so that I'd have a story for next week. I wasn't thinking I've got to learn, I've got to grow. I was thinking I've got to have a story for next week. And that kind of spacing, that reflection, I had to own the application of something very simple and to see how it worked out in my own environment. That was a critical part of my learning, in establishing new ways of thinking, new patterns that stayed with me. I wasn't just memorizing to report back the next week. I had to use it. If I didn't, I wouldn't have a story. And that to me was a really important element of that. Kieran, you say about behind the action, I had purpose of achieving it. It was the trigger. Absolutely. I would have been like pulling my hair out if I thought, well, I've been sent on this program. And how many of us How many of us have people on our programs who've been sent there as a punishment because they're not quite the good manager, they're not quite the leader, they're not quite what we expected, and then learning as a punishment is absolutely, you know, a no-go area. But you know, I think there are so many things about us wanting to be able to change and shift this year. I think is really critical. Now I'm gonna I've really asked you to say thank you for that, but there was no technology involved in this, but there were principles of technology. Now, what I'd like to do now is to say, okay, what principles can we bring? Now, I'd love it if you could get a piece of paper right now, and, you know, a largest piece of paper, maybe something this sort of size, and on it, I would love you to be able to draw these 4 boxes. Just these 4 boxes, because when we go through some of these areas with technology, I want you to write down some of the hints and tips that we've got from, you know, I put the books up there, but these 2 books, one is called Evidence Informed Learning. It's an amazing read about how we design for complex learning situations, all looking at the evidence, all looking at learning science, by Miriam Neelam and Paul Kirshner here in Europe. And then this book called Make It Stick, which again is a great book. It's The Science of Successful Learning by Brown, Rodiger and McDaniel. I'm going to try to kind of summarize some of the key points in those books so that you can own those. So just hopefully while I've been talking, you've been able to write that down. Now, I've asked you also to write my email address on the bottom of that piece of paper, laura@lauraoverton.org. There's a reason for that. I want you to keep hold of that, and so that you've got that. And I don't want you to think, oh, well, I meant to use that. So there's a reason for it. I'm not asking you all to email me with your deepest secrets, but it is part of how I want to share some things with you. So hopefully you've got a nice little a little piece of paper there that we can start to connect. And I would like to just flag one thing about scaling up with technology enhanced learning and technology. It is not about what I call the e-learning sandwich, where you have a piece of content that people may or may not do. Then they go on to the classroom program. It's all that meaty filling, all the great lunches and the great connections, followed by another piece of e-learning to reinforce that you can go back to. That, what has traditionally been known as the blended learning sandwich, has been there for forever, doesn't work. None of the science says that it works. All it does is give technology a bad name. And also all it does is give you a bad experience with technology. So please, this is not nutritious food for us in our learning design. You know, beware of the sandwich. Let's look at some different ways of doing that. So hopefully you've got your piece of paper in front of you. I want you to write down, because I want you to be able to use this in your breakout rooms, and they're coming very soon. Tips from learning science on tackling complexity. And this is basically a lot of the work that Miriam and Paul have been doing in evidence-informed learning. When we're trying to support leaders to tackle complex situations, we often say you need to be able to listen, or you need to be able to communicate better, or you need to be able to do this better. Isolated different individual skills. The science says if we're tackling complex skills where the outcome can be different, where we need to think differently, we need to be helping people think in terms of whole tasks. We need to help people think in terms of providing a bigger context for the complex skills, so that they can be given all these little pieces, like I was with Dale Carnegie, all these little hints and tips, but then they understand how it fits together. Now, I would say put that in one of your boxes here to think about whole tasks and the behavior, so particularly when it comes down to learning design. The second tip that they give you, write it down, worked examples. You know, when someone's new to something, and these transformational skills, maybe it's a hidden manager, or maybe it's a new manager you're working with, then if this is new to them, you know, you can't just say, oh, just go and Google, go and find out, go and explore. Give worked examples, give case studies. When you're introducing new concepts and how they fit together to tackle a particular issue, clarify that when you're working with that. And then the third area is this area of creating appropriate guidance. You know, as people can become more experienced, they need more guidance, more checklists, more ideas. So it's about appropriate levels of guidance that you can give to people along the way, modeling what they need to do in a whole task rather than just tackling an individual task. And as mastery increases, for me, in my book, I had a little tiny Dale Carnegie's golden book. I've still got it. I'd memorized most of those hints and tips. They'd become thinking habits for me. But I still had that little book, I think probably for the first 4 or 5 years. I would often flick through that book. So that appropriate guidance as a mastery increases, that's so important for us. The next thing, I've mentioned a number of times about the fact that it's become a habit. And I know that you guys earlier said about having a growth mindset, you know, the way that we think about things, they're our go-to behavior. In order to establish habits, the science says make it stick and informed learning all talk about the concept of spaced learning. You know, and we might think, well, hang on, our responsibility stops when they're in the course. Well, technology can help us extend that. It can help us to grow that. How do we help people reflect? How do we help them to grow? What tools do we have in our hands that allow us to space out our application and reflect on what's worked, what hasn't? Double loop learning. So these are just tips to think about in terms of design. Write it down in the second box. Second box also about how do we support change? What's the role of models? How do we introduce new models, new ways of thinking? And again, a resource I've curated for you is a great resource I love called Model Thinkers, about understanding these different models and how they connect together. For transformational leadership, we shouldn't just be going off for one program, one model. You know, transformational leaders who are able to really inspire, inform, induce creativity will be applying different models at different times. And as we mature and we master our skill, we'll be more creative in using and applying those models in new situations. So are we clear about our simple models and the toolkits that we're giving to people to establish those habits and try them out in new situations? And also another piece of science is about how do we reward success one step at a time. And I realized that happened to me in my Dale Carnegie program. Every week, someone was voted on, we were given praise. But now we also have the concept of micro-credentials and recognition. So again, write that in your second box. This is the second set of tips for you. The last one is all about our confidence. And how do we build confidence, which is, again, the science is saying it's so critical that we create confidence. If we want to have things go into long-term memory, we've got to be motivated, we've got to be confident. And there are things that we can put into our learning design and the design of our support of individuals as they build these skills that are so absolutely critical. And again, I'd like you to write down in your own tip. We talked already about coaching, championing, can't even say it, championing change, encouraging. Now that coaching may be through a formal coach, but is there peer coaches? How can we do that? How do we use technology to connect? Stretch assignments, experiments. Part of the work I'm doing with my Emerging Stronger program is the fact that we believe that learning and development can emerge stronger from the pandemic, but it means that we need to perhaps stretch ourselves. We need to be bolder. We need to have experiments. And we talk a lot when people come on our masterclass about running those little experiments over a 6-week period to build our confidence and to be supported by our peers, and that we get feedback which actually is constructive. It helps us build and helps us grow. Now, feedback might be through other people's stories, but it also may be through working with experts. So these are all science tips for building into your design. So a number of you are looking at the right design, but actually it's about creating the science. So hopefully you'll have got those written down on your sheet of paper now. So enough of me. You can tell I need to have a little bit of a break now. We're going to actually be going into breakout rooms, but before we do that, I would like to kind of perhaps be a little bit clear about what I'd like to ask us to do. We've talked about these principles on the side of the screen about, you know, different ideas for practical tips that you can do to help us work with a complex skill. We talked about practical tips to help us build habits in individuals. We've taught practical tips to help us build confidence. And all of these things are the science behind making a difference to people's behavior back in the workplace, which is the essence. So what I would like us to do in the small groups, it's going to be about 5 or 6 people, is to ask you very quickly just to say hi to each other, and between you choose one of the leadership skills, one of the future fit skills there, so that gives you a little bit of focus to work on. And then to say, okay, if I'm designing to build change in that skill, what ways can technology help me address maybe some of those tips that we talked about? Now, you may in your group just focus on one area, absolutely no problem. You may look at broad areas, but basically ask the ways in which technology can help you creatively address some of the things that hopefully you've written down here. Now, before we start this, what I'd like to encourage you to do is, if you've got your phone, just take a picture of this screen right now so that you've all got the task in front of you at hand. Kanika is going to be prompting us over the next 20 minutes. We've got 20 minutes for this exercise. And I'm going to ask you to summarize in the last few minutes in just a tweet, just a simple statement, your advice, the thing that you'd love to take back to the room, so that once we're all back in the room, you can just cut and paste that tweet. So you're probably going to need to allocate somebody to give that piece of advice, but have great fun, brainstorm. If you've got experiences of how you've done it, share them. If you haven't, explore together new ideas of how you could use technology to be able to help you address some of these design principles, which are absolutely fundamental for changing behaviors and building habits. So with that in mind, I would love you, please take a picture of the screen. I'd love to say over to you, and Kanika, let's go into our breakout rooms. A little secret that I have found: when we get technology-enabled learning for leaders right, it has the most powerful knock-on effect you can ever imagine in an organization. There are 2 programs that when we get it right, it makes a difference. One is onboarding, and one is how we support and engage our leaders. Because when we really help leaders to learn in a way using some of those tips, you know, understanding bigger complex issues, you giving them models, giving them techniques that allow them to stop, to reflect, to learn how to learn, when we give them the opportunity to kind of be coached and to be encouraged and to apply it into their own workplace and see the benefits of that, when we give them the opportunity to connect and engage with others, and it makes a difference, it makes an impact on their lives, what happens is that leaders who learn like that love to help other people learn like that. So the real hidden benefit is culture change. It genuinely is culture change, because they want to pass it on. They want to pass on this experience, where they want to make space, not for people to go on courses, but for people to genuinely learn. They want to make space for creating stretch assignments for other people. They want to make space to allow people to trial out new ideas and give it a go. They want to make space for people to reflect and learn within the team. They don't experience that in their own learning programs. They won't bring that forward. But if you get this right, it's one of the ways of being able to nudge and connect in with other people. So that would, that's my I've seen this time and time again. And when I was doing my own research, I did some interviews. I had the interview with this most amazing man, Ahmed El Kamaski from Bahrain, who is exactly that. He's a leader who learns. He's an engineer. He runs sales teams, but he did a year-long program of leadership development. It not only changed the way he led, but it also changed his attitudes towards diversity and inclusion and towards working and learning digitally and remotely. Because he was learning remotely in chats and teams like this with people from around the globe rather than people in the local program, he had a new vision of being able to help his team work more closely to home and to work remotely before COVID even kicked in. For his team, COVID didn't even make a difference because he already knew how powerful it was to be able to connect. He also knew how powerful it was to connect with diverse thinking through these global communities, and that has meant that he is spearheading diversity and inclusion initiatives just because of the experience he had in his management training program. So there's a powerful impact for people who are leaders who learn, and I've shared his case study in the work that we're doing. So where to start? Kiran, if you're with us still, Kiran Chopra, earlier when you said about sort of the goals, you said in the discussion area that it starts with me. Actually, as learning leaders, we're looking here at really very transformational learning strategies to build transformational leadership skills. That's what led to Ahmed's real cultural impact that he had as a result of that. But it really starts with us applying some of those skills to ourselves, our own self-leadership. There's never been an important time, whether you're a learning designing, a learning strategist, to actually start to say, which of these skills am I comfortable with, and where do I need to grow and change and move forward? So we've only got 15 minutes. I would like us to go into some breakout rooms to give ourselves some advice. Just so it's only, I'd like the breakout room just to be for 7 minutes, but to say, okay, how do we help each other to build these skills? Give each other some advice, coach each other, just share and give lots of space to each other. There's only 4 or 5 in each of the rooms, but just for 7 minutes, I'd like you to give each other advice and say, okay, how can we build those skills for ourselves? How can we model this for ourselves so that we're confident with other people as well? So if that's okay, Kanika, let's go into those breakout rooms now and help each other to build those transformational skills. So 7 minutes, go for it, enjoy, learn from each other. Hello, I'm back. I was in a little breakout room and it was fun, so I got some really good advice.
Laura, would you like to share that with us?
Yes, two lovely ladies in the room were talking about establishing different habits, and one was saying about getting back into journaling more, and we were talking about the role of reflection and how technology can do that, and then also Sarita was talking about emotional well-being and how important that is. And I thought actually combining those two pieces of advice is really important, because I'm supposed to write in my career, I have an article I have to get done, etc., etc. But you get out of the habit, and actually for me, combining those two ideas about, you know, how can I think about writing as a creative and an emotional benefit rather than a chore, and how can I practice doing that, is going to be my takeaway. So ladies, thank you so much for helping me give me something to reflect on and to do. I really appreciate it. Okay, so hopefully people got some good recommendations there. Pavna, I don't know whether you were in a group there as well or not, but have you got any advice for us? Oh, how we can build, you know, build our own.
So I actually was not able to join. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to join a group, but I do need a lot of advice, Laura, and thank you for your email. I will be reaching out to you on that.
Okay, so would love to know any points that you've had in your sessions as well, advice that you really resonated with you about how we can build our own self-leadership processes, and how we can build some of those skills in ourselves, because there's never been more important time for us as learning leaders to be able to influence and to inform and to connect and to work creatively with other parts of the business in order to ensure that our business is equipped and ready. You know, now is the time for challenging our own habits of maybe working in silos, working in programs, working on platforms, to say, actually, how can I bring my skill, bring my functional learning and development skills and apply them in new and creative ways to influence and to inform and to really work on the learning culture of our organization. So for me, I think this is the secret of success. It's the secret of the high-performing learning organizations that we had. It's just that we weren't able to articulate it in the right way. So again, thank you for your messages. Thank you for your thinking that's kind of coming through here. If Pavitra, yes, thank you. You talked about, and in our session as well, about the good daily habits that help us to keep momentum on the journey. So again, if we have some of those questions answered for Pavitra, you know, how can we give ourselves that permission to keep on moving on? It's a great book by Katie Milkman on how to shift habits and shift our own habits. And to be honest, in the Emerging Stronger work that I do, we run a 6-week masterclass, and it's all about how do we shift our habits. We choose a learning project where we want to make a difference, where we want to experiment, and then the self-leadership traits are actually on this slide here. Hopefully you can see that. But you know, the idea is that we can actually encourage each other. We can use a 6-week process to encourage each other to apply new tips, techniques, ideas, experiment, take risks, learn from each other. And that 6-week habit change with a cohort of people is something that we found really powerful as well. So that's just one of the things from ours. Kieran, as you say, there's a lot of change that needs to be made, not just one, but we do need to focus. Change in complexity is constant, but having a focus is really important aspect of us emerging stronger in that space. Okay, so we have a few more thoughts that are coming here. Aparna talking about developing more empathy, approachability, flexibility in the system. That's fantastic news to be able to really focus on that as well. So talk is good, but what are we going to do? This is just to summarize some of the things. I wanted to keep it to principles, because good transformational leadership is not about this is how you do it, but here are ideas that you can apply in order to shift your perspective that can be translated across different environments. So some of the things that we've been talking about today is the fact that these types of skills, and again, They're going to be available in the slide deck, which I'm going to give access to you in a moment. These skills aren't just for the elite, the high potentials anymore. They're for accidental managers who found themselves in a people-facing role, our hidden leaders in the organization who have been too nervous, too afraid, too unrecognized to even come forward. They're for the future leaders, and they're for us. They're for us. We all need them to become future fit. Technology can bring opportunities to more people as long as we don't mess it up. And just pumping out content is overwhelming. It's like we don't even know where to start. We need some structure, some guidance, some application, some of that basics, the learning science, how to deal with complexity, with guided, with recognition. Practical stuff that we can do in our learning design will really help us release the potential of individuals. And that we need, in order to do that, sometimes we need to challenge ourselves, and that's why we need these skills ourselves. So this is what we've been talking about today. But what will you do today? I'd like you to take a moment, just one last moment, to reflect on the action that you would like to do differently as a result of today. I'd like you to write it down on your sheet of paper for you. If you're willing, share it in the chat room. That would be amazing. We don't have time to comment, but this is about you. You asked about journaling. This is journaling. This is about commitment. This is about clarifying our ideas. Write that down and share that. Now, whilst you're thinking about that, just a final word from me, I've curated these resources. You've got my email address. For the next half an hour, if you just send me a quick email, that all it has to say in the subject line is transformational leadership. That's all I need from you. You don't have to ask me a question. You don't have to say anything. Just send me an email with transformational leadership, and all of these resources will immediately go into your inbox. Curated everything. I'll update the curation as well, so that I'll keep it live. There's a couple of extra things we've talked about today. All you need to do, send me one email to laura@lauraoverton.org in the next half an hour, and all of those resources will be available to you. I've only got it set up for the next half an hour, because after that I've then got to go get on and use my email for work. But right now it's all there for you to get that feed straight back into your inbox. So it's important that we own this. It's important that we apply it. If you'd like to join with me on the journey of emerging stronger, you've got more insights for that. But Pavna, thank you for the opportunity to connect, to share today, and for your marvelous support throughout the session. So I will hand back to you to close and to say thank you to incredible participants this morning as well.
Thank you so much, Laura, for such an insightful, thought-provoking, and a very practical learning experience. I think building future-fit skills for leaders has been a topic of conversation for a while now, but with the current business climate intensifying the need to scale learning, there's a visible need clearly to create a super learning environment for leaders, one that is backed by technology as well as an ecosystem to drive authentic change. I'm sure all of us are going to reflect on learnings from day 2 of this leader camp with Laura as we head back to our day. Thank you so much, Laura, for facilitating this workshop and giving our audience your time.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And just keep connected. All of these resources there, and I'm going to add another couple literally as soon as we come up. So do use them, and good luck with your journey. Keep in contact. LinkedIn, Twitter. Just love to hear your journeys, love to hear your stories, and do feel free to either use my email or connect with me on LinkedIn if you've got specific questions or want to develop some of these ideas. It's just a pleasure to be able to get up. And what's lovely is I've got a beautiful sunrise coming out of the window as well now. So you've made my day.
Thank you so much, Laura, once again for such a wonderful learning day. And I think we've had a wonderful learning week, and this wouldn't have been possible without our partner Skillsoft. So I would like to thank them for helping us stitch this deep learning journey for all of us. Skillsoft delivers online learning, training, and talent solutions to to help organizations unleash their edge. Leveraging immersive, engaging content, Skillsoft enables organizations to unlock the potential in the best assets, their people, and build teams with the skills they need for success. Empowering 36 million learners and counting, Skillsoft democratizes learning through an intelligent learning experience and a customized learner-centric approach to skills development, with resources for leadership development, business skills, technology and development, digital transformation, and compliance. For all our audience today, we request you to go to section 4 of the platform and apply your reflections and learnings and help us with your feedback. Section 4.1 is the reflections and section 4.2 is for feedback sharing. The platform is open until next week for you. You can browse the platform and share your learnings with us. The recordings for all the sessions will also be available on the platform from next week, and you will soon be receiving information from the team on it. For all those of you who have not received your 4-digit login code from the platform yet, please drop an email to the address provided on the chat section right now. We wish to come back with yet another season full of new ideas and opportunities for you. With this, we're going to wrap up. We now conclude the Leader Camp. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey with us. Have a great day ahead and stay safe.